Flames roared from the windows as Shipley Begum, her clothes already burned away, stumbled out of the front door. In that agonizing moment, it was impossible to know whether she would survive. But hey, before we dive into the story, do yourself a favor and pause the video right now. Go hit that like button and let's see if we can make this video reach 1,000 likes. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to your favorite story channel. Also, make sure to ring the notification bell so you never miss out on the latest and weirdest stories. Trust us, you won't want to miss what's coming your way. Now sit back, relax, and prepare to be amazed as we take you on an unforgettable ride. Don't forget to engage with us in the comments below. We love hearing from you. Without further ado, let's dive right in. The late summer sun shone brightly over East Ham, London, as the Begum family began their usual morning routine. The streets were calm, typical for a Wednesday afternoon in late August. The residents of this peaceful community were accustomed to the ordinary sounds of children playing, the hum of traffic, and the occasional chatter of neighbors exchanging pleasantries as they went about their day. Shipley Begum, 48, had lived in the area for only a few months, having recently moved from Birmingham with her husband Mohammed and their 2 children. The family was just beginning to settle into their new life in East Ham, having found a modest home on Newham Way. Shipley had always been a warm, kind-hearted woman, beloved by her family and admired by those around her. Her friends back in Birmingham often described her as the type of person who would go out of her way to help anyone in need, a trait that endeared her to many. Despite the stresses of moving to a new city, Shipley had quickly found comfort in her new home. She spent her days tending to her children, cooking for her family, and caring for their house. The Begum family had high hopes for their future in East Ham. Mohammed had recently started a new job, and the children were preparing for the start of a new school year. The house, though modest, had quickly become a home, and Shipley had taken pride in making it feel welcoming. But on that fateful Wednesday, August 28th, everything changed in the blink of an eye. It was just after 1 p.m. when the quiet of the afternoon was shattered by the piercing sound of screams. Smoke began billowing from the Begum home, dark clouds rising into the sky as the fire raged inside. The flames spread quickly, consuming the house and trapping Shipley within its fiery grasp. Inside the home, Shipley had been going about her daily routine. She was preparing lunch for her children, who were playing in the living room, while Mohammed was upstairs working on some household repairs. The fire started so suddenly that no one in the house had time to react. Within moments, the smoke filled the air, and the heat became unbearable. Mohammed was the first to notice the smoke. From upstairs, he could see the dark clouds billowing from the kitchen, and panic set in. He rushed down the stairs, shouting for his wife and children, but by the time he reached the bottom, the flames had already spread. The heat was intense, and the smoke made it difficult to breathe. Shipley, who had been near the source of the fire, was already in grave danger. Realizing the severity of the situation, Mohammed acted quickly. He tried to reach Shipley, who was now engulfed in flames, but the heat and smoke were overwhelming. He shouted her name, his voice filled with desperation, but she couldn't respond. The fire had spread too fast. Desperate to save his wife, Mohammed grabbed a nearby fire blanket and tried to cover her, hoping to smother the flames. But it was too late. Shipley's clothes had already caught fire, and the flames were too intense. In a panic, Shipley ran from the house, her body covered in burns, as she screamed for help. Next door, Imran Syed, 46, had just sat down for lunch when he noticed the smoke. At first, he thought little of it, assuming it might be coming from a nearby barbecue or someone burning rubbish. But then, he heard the screams. The sound sent a chill down his spine. Imran rushed outside to see what was happening and was greeted by a horrifying sight. Shipley, her clothes burned away, was running down the street, her body covered in flames. Behind her, Mohammed was desperately trying to douse her with water, using anything he could find in a futile attempt to extinguish the fire. "I was in complete shock," Imran later recounted. "It all happened so fast. One moment I was sitting at home, about to eat lunch, and the next I was witnessing this horrible scene. I've never seen anything like it in my life." Imran wasn't the only neighbor to rush to the scene. The screams and the sight of smoke quickly attracted the attention of other residents in the neighborhood. Muhammad Ali, 17, who lived just a few houses down, had been playing video games when he heard the commotion. He too rushed outside to see the source of the noise and was met with the same terrifying sight. Her clothes were completely gone, Mohammed recalled. She was burned so badly I didn't even recognize her at first. I just froze. I didn't know what to do. As neighbors gathered, some tried to help by calling the emergency services, while others, like Imran, tried to keep the couple's children safe. Imran quickly realized that the fire inside the house was still raging, and with the fire engines not yet on the scene, he decided to act. He gathered Shipley and Mohammed's 2 children and led them away from the house, ensuring they were out of harm's way. They were terrified, Imran said. I can't imagine what they were feeling, seeing their mother like that. I just wanted to get them to safety. Within minutes, the first fire engine arrived on the scene, followed by 2 more. A team of 15 firefighters quickly sprang into action, battling the blaze as it continued to consume the Begum home. The street was now filled with flashing lights and sirens, as police officers and medics joined the effort. But despite the quick response, the damage had already been done. Shipley was rushed to the hospital with severe burn injuries, her body having suffered from the intense heat and flames. Mohammed, who had sustained burns to his hands in his attempt to save his wife, was also treated at the scene. His injuries were not life-threatening, but the emotional toll of what had just occurred was immeasurable. As the fire was finally brought under control, neighbors gathered on the street, watching in disbelief as the firefighters worked. The air was thick with smoke, and the smell of burning wood and plastic filled the neighborhood. The once quiet street was now a scene of devastation, with the charred remains of the Begum home standing as a grim reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded. The news of Shipley Begum's tragic death spread quickly through the East Ham community, leaving everyone in a state of shock and disbelief. Shipley had been a beloved member of the neighborhood, even in the short time that she had lived there. Her kind nature and warm personality had made a lasting impression on those who knew her, and her sudden death was a devastating blow to the community. For days after the fire, the mood in the neighborhood was somber. The sight of the burned house served as a constant reminder of the tragedy, and the residents of East Ham struggled to come to terms with what had happened. It's just so hard to believe, said one neighbor, who asked to remain anonymous. She was such a kind person. It doesn't make any sense. How could something like this happen? The Begum family, still reeling from the loss, kept to themselves in the days following the fire. Mohammed and his children had lost not only their home, but the heart of their family. The emotional weight of the tragedy was almost too much to bear. Everyone is just heartbroken, said another neighbor, who had known the family since they moved in. They had only just started to settle into the neighborhood, and now this. It's devastating. As the community grieved, the authorities began their investigation into the cause of the fire. Police and fire investigators worked tirelessly to determine what had sparked the blaze that claimed Shipley's life. While the exact cause remained unknown in the immediate aftermath, the investigation took a startling turn when it was revealed that a 55-year-old man had been arrested at the scene. The man, who was known to the deceased, had been taken into custody on suspicion of being involved in the fire. The news sent shockwaves through the community as speculation grew over the circumstances surrounding the fire and Shipley's tragic death. We were all in shock when we heard about the arrest, Imran Syed said. I didn't know the man personally, but to think that someone might have been involved in causing this, it's just unbelievable. The 55-year-old man was later released on bail, but the investigation continued. Police assured the public that they were not seeking any other suspects in connection with the fire, but the uncertainty left many in the community on edge. We just want to know what happened, said one neighbor. We want answers. Shipley didn't deserve this. In the wake of the fire, the Begum family faced unimaginable grief. Mohammed, still recovering from the physical injuries he sustained in his attempt to save his wife, now had to grapple with the emotional devastation of losing her. Their children, too young to fully comprehend the tragedy, were left without their mother, their lives forever changed in the blink of an eye. Friends and family from Birmingham and beyond rallied around the Begum family, offering their support in any way they could. A GoFundMe page was set up to help cover the costs of rebuilding the family's life, and local organizations in East Ham stepped forward to provide assistance with food, clothing, and housing. Despite the outpouring of support, The road ahead for the Begum family was a long and difficult one. Muhammad, who had always been a stoic and strong figure in his family's life, now found himself overwhelmed with grief and guilt. He had done everything in his power to save Shipley, but it hadn't been enough. "I just keep thinking, what if I had done something differently?" Muhammad confided to a close friend. "What if I had been faster? What if I could have saved her?" As the investigation continued, an inquest into Shipley Begum's death was scheduled to be opened at the East London Coroner's Court on Thursday, September 12th. The inquest would seek to uncover the full circumstances surrounding the fire and Shipley's death, providing answers to the many questions that still lingered in the minds of her family, friends, and the community. The 55-year-old man who had been arrested in connection with the fire remained on police bail, and while no further arrests had been made, the investigation remained active. Police continued to work closely with the London Fire Brigade and specialist crime teams to piece together what had happened on that tragic day. For Shipley's family, the inquest represented a chance to finally understand the events that had led to her death. But even with answers, the pain of losing her would never fade. In the weeks following the fire, the community of East Ham came together to remember Shipley Begum and to support her grieving family. Vigils were held in her honor, with neighbors and friends lighting candles and sharing stories of the woman they had come to know and love. "She was such a gentle soul," one neighbor said during a candlelight vigil held outside the charred remains of the Begum home. "Always smiling, always kind. We will never forget her." As the community grieved, they also rallied around the Begum family, offering them the support they so desperately needed. In the face of unimaginable loss, the people of East Ham showed their strength and unity, standing together to ensure that Shipley's memory would live on. The house on Newham Way may have been reduced to ashes, but the legacy of Shipley Begum would endure. For those who knew her, she would always be remembered as a loving wife, a devoted mother, and a kind-hearted neighbor whose life was tragically cut short. As the investigation into Shipley's death continued, life in East Ham slowly began to return to a semblance of normalcy. The smell of smoke eventually faded from the air, and the charred remains of the Begum home were cleared away. But the memory of that tragic day would never truly disappear. For the Begum family, the path forward was uncertain. The loss of Shipley had left a void that could never be filled, and the emotional scars of that day would stay with them forever. But with the support of their community, their friends, and their family, they began to take small steps toward rebuilding their lives. In time, the answers to the questions surrounding the fire would come. The inquest would reveal the full truth, and the family would finally have the closure they so desperately needed. But for now, they focused on healing, on remembering the woman who had been taken from them too soon, and on finding the strength to move forward. Shipley Begum's story may have ended in tragedy, but her memory would live on. In the hearts of those who knew her, she would always be remembered as a beacon of kindness, a loving wife and mother, and a cherished member of the East Ham community.